Good afternoon and welcome to our webinar, Digital Marketing for the Funnel, a how-to guide. My name is Jessica Sacheray. I'm the Director of Higher Education Marketing for MediaCross. I've been with MediaCross for about 3 years, and prior to that, had about 10 years of experience in the higher education industry on the college and university side. MediaCross has been doing digital marketing for about 10 years, but my colleague and co-presenter, Brian, has helped us kind of adapt all of those digital marketing strategies and tactics that we've used for all different types of clients to the traditional enrollment cycle for higher education.
Yes, as you said, my name is Brian. I've actually been in digital marketing now for a little over 15 years, maybe a bit closer to 17 years now. But I've been at MediaCross here for just over 2.5 years now. But I will tell you, in that 15 to 17 years, it has evolved a lot over the time from where we were to where we are now. And the targeting capabilities and what we can do in digital marketing has changed so much. So that's why this conversation today we're having is very valuable to everybody.
And real quick, just housekeeping-wise, feel free to use the chat box in the toolbox of GoToWebinar. If you have questions, feel free to type them there. We'll try to circle back around to them if we've got time at the end, and if not, we can certainly follow up with you individually. So before I leave this slide, that little tidbit of information down there, a traditional undergraduate student visits the college website 115 times on average before applying. So that just tells you that really, digital marketing is such a crucial component of any recruitment marketing strategy. Because driving targeted traffic back to your institution's website is super key, and that's really the point of digital marketing, to lead them back to the various pages to do more research, landing pages, or your institutional website to help them through that decision-making process and prompt them to apply. Because digital marketing is so flexible and scalable, it can really be used at all points of the traditional recruitment funnel. So today we're just looking at digital marketing tactics and strategies through the lens of the funnel, from filling the top through converting all the way to enrolled. But before we get started there, before you get started in digital marketing in general, there's two things that we would want you to do before you really dive into tactics and strategies. Familiarize yourself with the language and set key performance indicators. Brian will talk through these two things a little bit further.
Yeah, absolutely. I know not everybody is familiar with all the industry jargon, shall we say, out there when it comes to digital marketing. So there's tons of words, people in the industry, or even you may come across your own research and starting to work with this. Some of the basics, of course, are going to be impressions. Impressions is anytime your ad, your video, anytime it has an opportunity to be displayed to a person, that's considered an impression right there. Click-through rate is the number of times your ad or your video or something is clicked on. And so that kind of makes sense. It's a percentage, of course. Cost per acquisition is something that, as you definitely want to try to keep aware of when you can. Cost per acquisition is the total amount of money spent for the acquisition of that person. So it could be getting your system. The acquisition could be the application. You kind of define what the acquisition is, and you actually track the amount of money you're spending to get to that point. That's up every industry, or every industry, but every institution as well will have different indicators of what they consider a good CPA is going to be. So a lot of times, if you don't know that, running a campaign like this where we can actually track the exact amount of spend to drive a particular conversion is a good baseline to start tracking that number, and it's easy to build from that point and optimize to that. The next one we have listed here, of course, is cost per click. That right there is very particular to paid search. That is a cost for a click on a paid search ad. We'll get into paid search a little bit later on here. And then another piece we have here are conversions. A conversion, once again, is kind of like the acquisition. You look at the campaign you're running, and the conversion could be submitting on a landing page, submitting their info to say, yes, I want to learn more about you. The conversion could be starting an application. It could be completing an application. And really, it's up to you. It could be scheduling a visit as well, too. So, it's all the base of the campaign. What are you considering conversion at this time, and what are you tracking for that? These right here, of course, are just some real basic words to know about. There's a lot of other things out there. For instance, the social campaigns, you got your likes, follows, you could track reactions. Those are things as well too. If you're on social media, I know you're very well aware of what those are. And then, of course, video marketing is getting bigger out there in the industry right now, too. You have view-through rate. That's the percentage times when your video starts. It gets all the way to the end, That's very important. And even cost per view. A lot of times you can bid or optimize campaigns on a cost per view basis. One thing to think about, too, is campaigns have different objectives for each one of them. Sometimes they're building awareness, which those are really good early on in the funnel, and your conversion points could be just clicking on the ad to come to learn more. It could be submitting their info on an actual landing page saying, yes, I want to learn more. And then you also have conversion-based campaigns where it's apply now or schedule a visit now. Those are very different in the way they're optimized, different in the way they run, but it's something to think about when you're setting these campaigns up or you're working with somebody to set these up is what's the final goal of this? Are we really trying to build awareness, or are we trying to build conversions at this point at a certain part within the funnel? So with those kind of things in mind, you have to think about what kind of data do you want to know about? What kind of data do you want from your industry provider that's helping you? Or if you're doing it on your own, what's going to help you in driving your campaigns forward to make sure they're successful? Knowing the awareness versus conversion is a good piece of that, because a lot of times your awareness, you look at impressions and click-through rate, but when you're looking at conversions, you want to track data specific to the cost per acquisition, data about the conversion itself as well too. So those are the kind of things you really want to look for when you're optimizing these campaigns and setting these up. A lot of times there are industry benchmarks out there. Now, I know there's not industry benchmarks for everything, but a couple of things to know about industry benchmarks is these two numbers you're going to see right here are specific. The most recent numbers I have to the education vertical that I found in research. For display ads right now, the overall average CTR is a 0.05%. I know that sounds low, but there's a lot of impressions you get out there, so that's not really that bad. I've seen some lower. That will vary depending on the time of year, up to a 0.07, 0.08 for this industry as well too. And the paid search click-through rate, once again, that's PPC, those kind of things. Overall, it's just 3.17%. There's a lot of variation there too. You can get it up to 6-7% depending on what you're looking at optimizing for, and it can be lower. But these are just overall industry averages for the education vertical at this time.
All right, so once we gave you that super quick and dirty explanation of kind of the basics as you get started to set up your campaign, we're ready now to get started on the funnel. So we'll start with leads. You might call them suspects, prospects, or some other name, but they're the cold contacts or the unknown. We'll talk about search, from a traditional standpoint in a second. But to fill the top of your funnel, if you're relying 100% on search, don't. There are so many digital marketing tactics available to help either support search, traditional higher education, recruitment style of search, or to find completely new types of students that don't fit your typical profile, but would be a great fit for your university or a particular program. At this stage of the funnel, you'll find media cross-suggesting all of these approaches in various kinds of forms depending on the partner that we're working with. Brian will talk a little bit about each one of these, and then we'll show you some examples of how we've implemented them with our college and university partners.
Right, like Jeff said, even though this list could even be a little bit longer, not all of these are always going to be the best answer for everybody's search campaign. For instance, pay-per-click advertising, that's a great tactic. There's different types of campaigns out there. That's your person that goes to Google, types in a search, where should I go to college at? What college is right for me? You could be bidding on those kind of terms, but quite frankly, that is not something I would suggest for the average college, because that's a very general kind of question. But for generating leads, if you're a college that had a top psychology program and somebody was searching for best psychology college near me, that's maybe something you should be bidding on, because that's a great opportunity to find a lead that will come in, learn about how great your psychology program is, and maybe they attend there. So once again, pay-per-click is great, but depending on what you're marketing at this time, it may not be the right fit for every school. So that's something to think about. Social media advertising, there's a lot of information out there about social media itself. People are using a little bit less, especially this younger generation, but quite frankly, it's a very, very heavily researched, it's a highly used research tool, shall we say, for a lot of people in this younger generation. Those age 15, 18-year-olds are doing a lot of research to learn about who you are as a brand and what's going on your social media profile. They'll go and they'll see what you have going on, what activities have been going on there, what are students saying that are attending the school on your social media page. So that's an opportunity to target them on these platforms and send them specific messages to lead them into learning more about the school that you currently are working for. One of my favorite tactics, of course, right here is audience mirroring. On social media, Facebook, Instagram, they actually call it lookalike. And so it's the same term depending on who you're talking to and what platform you're on, whether it's mirroring or lookalike. What I really like about this right here is it's a great way to expand your reach to find somebody very similar you have going to school right now. The way this works is whoever you're working with, whatever company, Media Cross would take a list of, we could take a list of your applicants you had last year, your current students, somebody who's very fits the average student you have at your school. So we take this list of 500, 800,000 students, could be as low as a few hundred as well too, and it gets uploaded in the system. The system actually hashes that information, so it's all completely private, and they try to match it online to what these people's activities are online, learning more about them. What do they research? What are they doing? What are their activities? What do they like? And trying to create an overall kind of a digital profile of these activities and interests these kind of people do. What we then do is create a mirror of, well, who else is on the internet that we could target that's very similar to these kind of people. What's great about this is those people who are not part of your system right now very much match who you have in your system. So there's a good likelihood that once they learn about your school, they're going to be very interested in attending or even learning more about the school at this time right now. That's one of the reasons early on this is a great opportunity to use this kind of software or this kind of tactic, is finding those people similar. Email retargeting is something that kind of ties into search a little bit as well. Is once you have a list of names or something like that and you're reaching out to these people, we actually can have a retargeting pixel within your emails to bring them back to a landing page to either maybe do a conversion at a point or something along those lines. And the last thing we have listed here is geofencing and geotargeting. We'll definitely get into more into that a little bit later on, but that's another tactic to find students depending on where they are geographically.
All right. So let's talk, though, about that bread and butter of higher education lead gen, search. Media Cross provides clients with search support through digital marketing, mail piece development, email campaigns, custom, interactive landing pages. But if you haven't been layering your search campaigns with digital marketing like IP targeting, list-based social campaigns, and email retargeting, whether you're handling search in-house or you're working with a partner, it's time to start because you're really going to get more bang for your buck out of those name buys that you are purchasing and the campaigns that you're building around them. And you can also, even like the audience mirroring that Brian was talking about, if you don't necessarily have a giant name buy budget, we can, in a search scenario, take the smaller list of records that you've purchased, do an audience mirroring campaign, and potentially reach kind of double that potential from that smaller list.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a few tags we have listed here, like she mentioned, the IP targeting, the list-based social campaigns. So IP targeting, we'll get into specifics about how that works in a minute. But what we like to do with the IP targeting is we actually serve ads via IP to our IP, of course, is your internet protocol. That's the physical, the digital address for a device that's online or a physical location. And what we do is we target these IPs with ads to raise awareness of your brand. One of the things we like to do with IP targeting is begin serving the ads before the emails. The reason we do this a lot of times is when an email comes through and you have no idea who that company is or who the institution is or something like that, there's a very low chance they're going to engage with that email or even click through if they do open that because it's a very cold lead. Now, if the student or influencer begins seeing the ads 10 days before, a week before, 2 weeks before, they see ads about the school they're unaware of. They may click on that ad to learn more about them, or if nothing else, we're increasing the brand awareness of who you are, and you're much more familiar to the student when they see that email come through. So that will have an immediate effect on how your email campaigns perform. Of course, once you do have those lists as well too from the purchases, we upload those into social media, being Facebook, Instagram, and that right there will hash out and find their profiles within social media, and we can target those profiles directly with ads as well. And as you're sending out the emails for your search campaign, you're placing that retargeting pixel in there to act as that reminder to go ahead and schedule a visit or go ahead and complete the form saying, yes, I want to learn more. That's another way to keep the person engaged beyond just seeing the email or the mailer that comes through in their house.
So another approach to filling the funnel with right-fit students using digital marketing is to think strategically about where prospective students are going to be that might be a fit for a particular program, for instance. You haven't bought their names, but are there, places, events, et cetera, that might be a great fit for a particular type of program? the images you see on the screen now are the visuals of a campaign that's, I guess, been running for about 3 years now with the theater school at DePaul University. Brian will talk to you a little bit about, how we kind of came up with this particular strategy when the theater school at DePaul University was looking for very niche programs, students interested in these super niche programs, things that I'd never heard of, like dramaturgy, and also wanted very, highly talented students. So Brian will talk to you a little bit about the strategy behind it, but here you can see, some samples of the ads and the landing page that was developed.
Like Jess just said, we're actually our third year of running a campaign of this type with DePaul, and it's been very successful. One of the challenges working with DePaul is they have a phenomenal program, but what they're looking for is the top talent out there. So a list buy or something like that's great, but that's not always going to be the top theater talent, because theater talent doesn't always convert over to that 4.0 person. So we got to find the people who's very interested, very ingrained in this industry. And after talking and learning more about theater, those kind of things, we learned about all these summer programs. A lot of the higher end schools out there have, even some of the middle and lower end schools, they have summer theater programs that high school students love paying to go to, and their parents pay for it. And it's a very unique proposition because they're not cheap. They're actually quite expensive. So if the students go into this, they must have some ability within this or some high drive to move forward within the industry. So what we're actually able to do is we looked at competitor schools' summer programs they have going, because not everybody offered a summer program in all things theater, kind of like you just mentioned. Not every program had a directing. Not every program had dramaturgy type or scene design or acting. So we found the higher end programs that matched things that were being offered by DePaul right here. And then we created some custom ads on each one of these different programs, everything from the designer programs to directing to dramaturgy. And if a school had a summer program going on that featured one of these types of majors, we actually went ahead and created a geofence at these events right here, summer programs, and we served ads to students attending these for a 3 or 4 week period as they were there. This is a great example of looking at opportunity to work within a niche to figure out where your prime student will be with people around him, other influencers that are very similar to him, and serve those ads to him to get that brand awareness really in front of who they are, in front of them at the prime time, because in the summer, they're away from their parents, those kind of things. There's a lot of opportunity to serve these ads to them, and we know who they are. We know that a lot about them just because they're affording to attend the summer program and the type of majors they're probably looking at because of what program they're currently attending.
Because the reality too is that all of the students that are attending, a very high level, for very talented student type of theater summer program, the reality is that they're not all going to be accepted at those those very selective theater program schools. So this is an opportunity to get your brand out there when they're still, sophomores, juniors, seniors in high school, still kind of making their list. And not necessarily having to purchase a name and kind of identifying them on that interest in event. So that is a hyper-targeted version of location-based lead generation, but there are also more general approaches to getting your brand in front of students who are primed, from their location to engage with your brand.
So let's start this off right here before we get down to the opportunities of the college fairs, community colleges this year. What's the difference between geofencing and we have here geolocation retargeting or geotargeting, those kind of things? They're both very similar. Geofencing is an overall term where you create a virtual barrier around a location, and you basically create that fence right there, and you're serving people within that location ads. It can be whatever it may be. So the important thing when you're doing geofencing is a college fair is a great opportunity for a geofence, because if somebody's attending the college fair or at that location, because you can get very small in specifically where you're looking at using latitude, longitude, the areas you're trying to serve ads to, very mobile based, you want to serve mobile devices, of course. But for a college fair, if a person is there, they're probably a student, a parent, or they're working at a competitor college. But to be honest with you, 90% of the people at that event are somebody you want to serve for brand awareness purposes, get your brand in front of them. So anytime you're doing a college fair, we can geo-target or geofence that location and serve the ads there. A nice thing, too, is we can actually, when those devices get served the ads, even after the event is over and they have gone, we can actually retarget them for a period of 2 or 3 or 4 weeks even with ads after that event is over. So that's a nice thing about geofencing is we can create a date and time stamp that people were at this location and then follow them for a time period to serve those ads. So now we look at geolocation retargeting or even geo-targeting. When you do the geo-targeting, you create that geofence, but now we're layering targeting rules beyond that. You have the age limits, you can have interest limits, anything along those kind of lines, and you're targeting people within there that have meet a certain profile. So that's where the targeting comes in. The geolocation retargeting that we kind of mentioned is somebody in the geofenced area that we retarget with ads at a time. So what opportunities can you use this for? We've already mentioned the college fairs. That's a great opportunity because, there's a high density of college-bound students and parents at the locations. If you're four-year institutions, maybe you want to influence transfers. So at that right time of year when transfers could begin doing their research, you can actually target the community colleges, target their campuses, those kind of locations with transfer-related messages. So you can see that on the right-hand side right there. This is a transfer-specific message that we were using to help influence people to learn more about a school for transferring. Sporting events, we've had great successes recently targeting several high school sporting events. And now I wouldn't say the average high school football game, but more of the state competition levels. While the state championships for football is great, there's only 2 schools there, but something to think about perhaps is targeting a basketball tournament, a state basketball tournament. You'll have 6, 8, 12 schools there at that time with, top levels, talent, athletic-wise, parents, influencers, those kind of things are all attending these events. That's a great opportunity. Then, of course, even your own campus. It may sound counterintuitive a little bit to target your own campus, but there are people doing visits, appearing on your location, on your campus, that are not a part of your student body. There are ways to build the audience out to exclude people who are within your student body to retarget those visitors later on and serve them another ad to bring them back into the fold.
And while this doesn't necessarily fall within the recruitment funnel, targeting your own campus from a retention perspective can be really helpful too, especially like community colleges where you might, want to remind students that it's time to register for the next semester's classes, those kinds of things.
Absolutely.
So targeting your own campus is another, way to get a little creative with the geofence and geo-target approaches. Oh, sorry, I went right over the inquiries. There we are. So now we're on to inquiries. We're in the official top of the funnel. We know what we're working with from a data standpoint, and you're ready to build really engaging, effective application campaigns. And now that you're working with a warm list, it's time to think about how you can use that list in IP targeting. So we wanted to dive just a little deeper into what's a really popular tactic that we use a lot to drive applications.
So this is where I'm going to tell you about how IP targeting works, and I understand if your eyes gloss over. It's okay. So we'll take this nice list that you have of your inquiries, and don't forget, this tactic could be used earlier in search or something like that, but we're just kind of focusing on this part of the funnel of inquiries. You have people who are interested in learning more about your school. They've inquired with a learn more. They did a visit now type scenario or anything that now classifies as an inquiry. So we have their names, their physical mailing addresses, and that kind of information about them. We submit this into a system that actually can help us reverse match the IP address. So they take the mailing address and they find what is the internet address that serves that household where that person lives. Once we find that internet address, we actually serve them ads. Instead of just mailing a mailer to them, we can now begin serving them digital ads to that household. What's the benefit of that? While the mailer may come, sit on a desk, and then somebody, a parent, a brother, sister may look at it, the student may look at it, it'll end up in the trash in a couple of days. Typically, we all know that's kind of true, but at least get some exposure, right? The important thing here is when we IP target a household, we can actually serve ads to everybody within that household for 2, 3, or 4 weeks with a very relevant message. Maybe it's time for a major open house you have coming up. Maybe it's time to move them past the inquiry into the apply now phase, which we'll talk about a little bit later on. But we could actually transition that message to these households of people who have inquired to allow them to learn more about your program at this time. Maybe it's time to push for financial aid or something like that. And that mailer is one opportunity, but by sending it to the household digitally, the parent sees financial aid ads come across 4 times over a period of 5 or 6 days. Well, you know what, maybe they'll turn their student child and say, hey, we've talked about financial aid at the school. I know you inquired with them, or something along those kind of lines. And it really pushes that conversation forward more than just that simple mailer or the email that just goes to the student only. So there's a lot of opportunity to expand your reach and your influencer campaigns within households using IP targeting. We have this great did you know right here. I know we've talked about a couple other ones here, But from many of the campaigns we have ran, we have seen IP-influenced campaigns. That's talking about, when it comes to match rates, we've updated these lists, and there's never a 100% match rate for lists. I have seen match rates to households being 92, 93%, but it's very safe to say it's been probably 2 years since I've seen a list not come back at least 85% match. So I like to say 85% is usually the lowest we have for match rates for getting the IP addresses for households. So that means 85% of those inquiries have the opportunity to get these messages in those households. That's significant because of the 85%, we have shown they're 30% more likely to apply than that 15% we couldn't match. So the higher we can push that percentage up, is I can almost guarantee you're going to have more applications because of that, due to the influence we have here. Because, we're not just hitting that student, we're hitting the entire household. So there's a good influence piece coming into there.
Okay. So at the applicant stage, you now know more about the pool, in your funnel than you ever have. On your application, you have more, you should now know more demographic information, know what major they're pursuing. You might know if they need financial aid or if they plan to live on campus. Use this data to target your applicant pool with product messaging. Let your emails, your other communication tools like direct mail and letters handle that process. But it's really, a great idea to start infusing social media marketing that focuses on the product and reminds them why they applied in the first place. Like, for instance, you can see here a kind of a later funnel sort of social media ad that reminds students that Maryville University gives all full-time students an iPad Pro. So think about kind of those unique things about your college or university as you start to craft the applicant campaign.
No, absolutely. One of the best things about social media, when it comes to the IP targeting, like we were talking about earlier, there's a minimum list size you have to be able to submit for matching, because there is a process behind that. And right now, the platform we work with, I believe, is 250 names. It changes a little bit here or there once in a while, but right now, I'm pretty confident saying that list is 250. When it comes to social media, if you have students are very specific within a program that you want to make sure you keep a message in front of, we could actually upload a list as small as 20 to 25 people, and it will match it back, and we could serve ads to an audience that small. So these messages are very relevant, and it's very strong to the people, like it's a one-on-one connection at this point, and you're reminding them, oh yeah, this program is important because of this, or this school has a great digital program, and yes, what you see from the Maryville piece. Keeping them engaged and reminding those kind of like breadcrumbs during the time period between application and enroll is a very important piece, and that keeps you involved with them.
And it's not that expensive to do highly segmented social media campaigns either. Like, as far as using your data, showing them messages that you know are going to resonate, and keep them engaged as we move to the next phase. So now we're with in the admit phase. This is the beginning of the yield phase. So how can admitted students be marketed to digitally? So we've found great success at this phase of the funnel in targeting campaigns around admitted student events. Super important, right, for those admitted students, student days the registration days, whatever you call them, to be packed. That's when your admitted student pool is able to come on campus again. Maybe they haven't been on campus for several months. They get to, register for classes. They maybe get their student ID. They start to feel more like a student at your university. So driving that traffic using a variety of campaigns can be really effective. But also, this is where the influencers, so the parents and the guidance counselors, start to enter back into the decision-making process. So what kinds of campaigns can you set up or think of to get your brand back out there to those two types of influencers as they start helping to make that final decision?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we all know that once a student is actually admitted, getting into that final enrolling phase is very important. So, like she was talking about, these events are very large, very important for your communication to the students, because they have to attend these events, or they have to do something to move in that next phase to make sure they're going to be at your school come day one of attendance. That's where the IP targeting comes back in once again. We kind of missed it in that previous funnel because they applied, we don't want to keep sending IP targeted message to it. But once you admit them, Now we need to make sure, as she's saying, the influence is there from the household, from everybody related to that person. So we kick back on the IP targeting and then that very highly related messaging for social media of attending an event comes kind of back into the fold as well.
Okay, we're almost there. So deposits, you can still use digital marketing to keep your deposited students engaged over the long summer months. But really, at this phase, yield is an exercise in brand affinity. With all of the trends that everyone probably on this webinar knows, that students are applying to more and more schools, they're depositing to more and more schools. So how can you kind of stay at the top of that list by basically showing some love and becoming more and more personal with those deposits through things like Facebook Live, Twitter chats, etc. But it's also really important at this point to start kind of passing the baton of the yield phase to other parts of campus. To use faculty or student life staff or other people that are really truly going to be more of their network and the people that they're going to get to know than the admissions office at this point. So hosting different Facebook Live and Twitter chats can be really effective in addition to other types of digital campaigns, and Brian will talk about that in a minute. As far as the admitted student and parent groups, the reason why we list that here is you may already be doing that, but promoting any type of yield sort of activity digitally is really important that you're promoting it through the groups, because with the Facebook algorithms, your organic posts on Facebook probably aren't getting seen by most of your followers. But if you have admitted student and parent groups, keeping those groups and the posts that you're putting out there really active in the summertime, again, with a little bit more information about what it's like to be a student and what the different services and activities that they might find. Make sure that you're promoting those in the groups and not just on the organic page.
The conversation at this point, like she's been talking about, is almost a one-on-one at this basis. It's great that we've worked and you've been in communication. We have all these previous touch points from the search to the inquiry to apply to everything. We know a lot now about that person that has actually went ahead and deposited in. You more likely know, like she said, what program they're involved in. That's a great opportunity to create a program-specific ad touting how great your program is to people who have been admitted and deposited to that program. Just that final push kind of across the line of, can't wait for you to begin learning about this program at this school. A lot of opportunities. We use that, for instance, right here in this ad. You can see it's a carousel ad. That's one of the social media ads where you have multiple cards scrolling left, right, people can look at. The reason I have this shown here is this is actually, it says it's a top 5 Peace Corps volunteer producer. We found that using this right here, we actually had a very specific set of cards that we were serving, and this card resonated with people who have been enrolled and people who have been accepted to the school here. People were very intrigued and loved that message, and they clicked and interacted on it a lot. What was great about this at this point is we know people who've deposited now interested in the school right here is very interested in that Peace Corps message. Maybe that's something we move earlier on in the funnel come next year. So it's a great opportunity to learn more about, not just or push them into that last part of the funnel that's actually attending. But now here's a great almost study case of what works and what resonated very well with them to learn later on. And we kind of start that cycle over again with the things we learn at the end of this. There's one thing that we haven't addressed a whole lot here, but I don't want to ever forget about this. If there's nothing else you want to do, and a lot of this seems very large and very overwhelming, and all these different strategies and things we can do here is retarget, retarget, retarget. And even if it's just a basic retargeting to come and do a visit, there's all kinds of companies such as us, or maybe even yourselves, depending on what you're looking at. You can actually place retargeting pixels on your website, and that is the highest return on investment type of program you can run and the lowest hanging fruit you're going to have out there, because all you need to do is put a retargeting pixel on your site, create the parameters of a person looked at admissions, looked at financial aid, but maybe they didn't look at your visit page. If that's the case, serve them a visit ad, bring them back, and make them do a visit. It could be program specific. It could be anything out there, and just that is an extreme low-hanging fruit because the person already has familiarity with your brand, and you just need to move into that next phase of the funnel of taking that next step right there. There is no audience matching. There is no looking. There is no finding. That is a person you need to take that next step, and this is something that I will never underhype enough out there, is retargeting is the lowest hanging fruit for anybody out there, that if you're not doing that today, please think about starting that as soon as possible and talking to somebody about a great retargeting campaign for your brand, because it will have significant impact on anything you're doing right now for recruitment purposes.
Well, thank you for joining us for Digital Marketing for the Funnel, a how-to guide. One of our favorite things about digital marketing as it relates to higher education and the recruitment cycle is it's really the one tactic, in the whole slew of tools that we might use in a recruitment cycle, from prints and direct mail and emails. It's the one thing that if we are running a longer campaign, let's say 6 months to a year, we're actually delivering reporting to our clients that helps them refine those other tactics. There's different, online profiles and interest-based information that we're basically learning about through the process of a digital campaign that is that is basically just helping us build and learn more about the clients that we're working with. So it's such a powerful piece of the toolbox, and we hope that this information was helpful to you. I don't see any questions in the chat box at this point. Do you see it there?
No.
Okay. I don't see any there, but I'm going to just look on my side too. And we will, you can certainly email us directly. You have your email, or our email addresses there on the screen. Let us know if we can talk to you a little bit more about your digital marketing strategy. You can also go to our website, mediacross.com, and then also you will get a recording of this webinar in your email. It'll be probably just later this afternoon. Thank you again for joining us. Let us know if we can help.